Math time, everyone. We are in chapter 11, lesson 2. We're going to review a little bit before we jump into the new things that we have. It's a really good idea to start keeping track of the words that we're learning. We're adding a lot of new words like we did in the shapes uh, chapter when we learned parallelogram, angle, vertex, edge, and things like that. Because there will be a vocabulary section on the test, and we want to be sure that we know our words. And our essential question is still, how can I measure objects? And we're going to start looking at different tools that we can use to measure with. Now, I showed this to you in the lesson 1 video. There is an inch ruler, okay, and you can download it. It was posted yesterday, and print it. And if you cut this out and tape the shorter side to the longer side, you'll actually have an inch ruler, a ruler that has 12 inches. It's a good idea to have one if you don't. Now, there's another one that you can download and build today, and this is for a yardstick. Now, a yard, as we will soon find out, is much bigger than a ruler. It's actually 3 rulers put together. So if you don't have one, or if you don't have a tape measure or something, you can print this out and follow the directions. And maybe mom or dad can help you make one if you don't have a printer. Okay, let's move on. Okay, so we looked at this yesterday. This is called a ruler. It's also called an inch ruler. It's got 12 inches, and it does not start at the edge of the wood. It actually starts at the 0. So there's a little bit of space there. And 12 inches is actually where that 12 line is, not the edge of the wood. So that's important to remember. Okay? And we use this to measure things that are small. Now, we said that on the left side there are centimeters, which we're not going to talk about for a while. And on the right side we have the inches. Okay, and that's what we're going to focus on. And we said that an inch would be about the size of a quarter. Okay, a quarter is a little bit less than an inch. So 2 quarters here would equal almost 2 inches. Now, on the right, we still have that inch ruler. It's got 12 inches, and that equals a foot. Okay, that's really important. So don't think of the foot that you put your shoes on. This is a foot of measurement. 12 inches equal a foot. And like we said, it's really good to use if you want to measure something small, like maybe a glass or a DVD or a pencil or something like that. But next to that, we have a yardstick. Now, a yardstick is actually 3 feet. Okay, so 3 feet equal 1 yard. 36 inches equal 1 yard. So here we've got 12 inches. And by the way, this mark right here that you see that kind of looks like quotes, that is the mark for inches. Okay, so you can remember that. You don't need to know it for a while. So we've got 12 inches there and another 12 inches here because that's the second ruler, and we've got another 12 inches here. Okay, so 12 plus 12 is 24, and 24 plus 12 is 36. And we can also do it like this. This is also 1 foot, and that mark is the mark for a foot. That's 1 foot, that's another foot, and we've got another foot right there. So 36 inches equal 3 feet, and that is the same as 1 yard. And this big old stick is called a yardstick. You've seen them before. You've seen something like them before in science when we did our friction experiment and our catapult experiment, although some of you used meter sticks, which are a little bit longer. We're going to talk about those later. Why would we use a yardstick? It wouldn't be very good if we wanted to measure a strawberry or if we wanted to measure a caterpillar. We use the yardstick to measure something bigger. It's difficult to measure big things with just a ruler. Okay, so let's take a look at something else. Now, I know we haven't watched football in a long time, but this is a football field. And all of these little white lines that you see here, okay, we call them hash marks, are actually 1 yard apart. So if you were to count them, you would actually, if you started, let's say, all the way down at the bottom, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there's 5. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And there's 10, and there's the number 10. Each of those hash marks is a yard. This is 10 yards. And then if we go again, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So that's the 15-yard line. Okay, so football is a game that's measured in yards. If we used 1-foot marks, if we did it instead of yards, if we used feet, there would just be too many white lines and it'd be very difficult to see them all if you were at the stadium or if you were watching it on TV. Okay, so we're using yards for bigger things and we're using feet and inch rulers or rulers for smaller things. Okay, now before we go further, let's take a look at the vocabulary that we have learned so far. We have a ruler. Sometimes it's called an inch ruler. It's 1 foot long or it's 12 inches long. We have a yardstick, which is 3 rulers basically put together. So it's 3 feet or it's 36 inches. 12 plus 12 plus 12. We have an inch, and remember an inch is a small unit of measurement about the size of a quarter. A foot, which is how many inches? 12, right. We have a yard, which is how many inches? 36. And how many feet is it? 3. Be careful. And we have the word measure. When you're going to measure something, you want to see how tall or how long, how wide, how deep it is. And we've got this word, to estimate. That's the verb, to estimate. Or if we talk about the noun, an estimate. This is when we try to figure out how long something is without actually measuring it. So you're kind of just using your eyes. You're almost guessing. Okay, we have to know all these words because we're going to add more soon and we don't want to fall behind. All right, now let's get to our lesson. All right, so we left the football field and now we're on the basketball court. And you can see a bunch of things here. Which of these do you think we could use a ruler to measure? Think about it for a moment. If you have this printed out, circle the things that you could measure with a ruler. You can pause here for a moment. Okay, well, I think we could measure most people's shoes. Probably a basketball, a clock, the exit sign, maybe the net, and the rim, maybe the door handles. Okay, we probably wouldn't want to, well, we wouldn't want to measure the height of this backboard with a ruler because it would just be too difficult to do. We wouldn't want to measure the height of the chair or the length of the window. Okay, we'll have to use a different tool for that. Now, let's move on. So let's read together at the top. It says guided practice. You can measure in feet or yards. A foot is equal to 12 inches. A yard is equal to 36 inches. Length can be measured in any direction. And if you look at the blue helpful hint, it says 3 rulers is 3 feet. And the yellow helpful hint says 1 yardstick is 1 yard. Now, they did a pretty good job here in the book. If we wanted to measure this filing cabinet, we could use this yardstick. We could just stand it up right there and measure, no problem. Look at the other side though. If we tried to do it with the rulers, oh, it's so hard to keep them straight. You probably need somebody else to help you, and you couldn't really get a good measurement that way. Okay? Now, one thing you have to be very, very careful about is what comes after the number. In math, probably from now for the rest of your life, you should never stop with the number. You should always see what comes after it. Are we talking about $3 or 3 feet or 3 miles, 3 inches, 3 degrees, 3 cents? What comes after it is really important, and it's part of the answer. So if we measure this filing cabinet, we want to know how many feet is it? Okay, and it's 3 feet. But we also want to know how many yards it is. And we can see 1 yardstick, and we know that 3 feet equal 1 yard. So the answer is about 1 yard. And remember, for these lessons, we don't have to be exact. We're just trying to get close. Now, it says find the object, estimate the length, measure each object in feet or yards. Well, object number 1 is a school desk, and it says here, estimate. Well, you probably don't have a school desk at home. But why don't you stand up and see if you can remember about how high, how tall your desk is compared to you. What part of your body does it go up to? All right, now I think it's probably, this is just my estimate, it's probably about 3 feet. Now, if I measured it, guess what? It would be 3 feet. Okay, it's pretty close. Now look at number 2. If mom or dad have a desk at home, measure how tall it is. Okay, if they don't have a desk, you can use a table. Okay, or think about my desk in the classroom if you remember it. Remember, you'd come to the back and give me your homework in the morning, your take-home folder. Think about how tall that is, but be careful because now it's asking about yards. That's something you have to be very careful with, okay? And because we may not have these objects, some of you may not be able to measure today. Okay, so you might only be able to do the estimating. Let's move on. All right, so now this next part, number 3, find a chair. Number 4, if you have a bulletin board at home, you can try it. I know we have one in the classroom. And if you don't have one, why don't you use a pillow? You can measure a pillow here. Okay, so I'm going to just write that in. Okay, and then just have mom or dad check your number to make sure you're doing it correctly. Number 5, if you have a bookshelf or some cubbies at home where you keep books or toys. Number 6, a filing cabinet. And number 7, that's actually a poster. Again, if you don't have all of these things, you might have to just use your imagination or find another object that you have. Okay, maybe you can measure a TV, but make sure you're always looking at what comes after the word. Sometimes they're asking about feet, sometimes they're asking about yards. That's really important. Let's move on. Now, number 8. The length of Sydney's tennis racket is 2 rulers long. Do you remember what a ruler is? Do you remember how many inches and how many feet a ruler is? If not, rewind and go back to the beginning of this video. The length of Sydney's tennis racket is 2 rulers long. How many feet long is Sydney's tennis racket? So first they tell us that it's 2 rulers long, and now they're asking you how many feet long is Sydney's tennis racket. Think about that. Number 9. Gabriella is 2 inches taller than a yard. How many inches tall is Gabriella? Oh my goodness. Gabriella is 2 inches taller than a yard. How many inches tall is Gabriella? Well, the first thing we need to know is how many inches is a yard? Do you remember? Okay, good. It's 36. And Gabriella is 2 inches taller, which means we have to add something to that 36. I think you've got it from here. Brain Builders alert, numbers 10, 11, and 11. Number 10, the pool at the park is 19 feet wide. Oh, that's really important information. The pool at the park is 19 feet wide. How many yardsticks would it take to measure the width of the pool? Oh, okay. Well, 19 feet wide, that means we'd have to use a lot of rulers. We'd have to use 19 rulers to measure the width of the pool. That would take a long time and it would be very difficult, and we'd need a lot of people to help us. How many yardsticks would it take to measure the width of the pool? Think about that. Instead of using 19 rulers, how many yardsticks could you use? And number 11, Josh used 10 yardsticks to measure the length of his basement. How many rulers would he have used? Number 10 and number 11 are kind of the opposite of each other. In number 10, we want to know how many yardsticks. In number 11, we want to know how many rulers. Now, I'll give you a good piece of advice. You don't need a ruler or a yardstick for these. What might help, if you can't do this in your head, try drawing it out. Try maybe creating a miniature picture that would help you with this. It's going to take a little bit of time until you get really comfortable with these words and with these sizes. Just go slowly and you will get the answers in a few days. Now, your homework is on pages 655 and 656. Again, if you don't have the objects they're talking about, do your best, or you can write in something else. And remember, check the label. If they're asking you about feet, make sure you're answering in feet. Okay? This is a little bit challenging, but good luck, and I can't wait to hear about how you did. The end.